Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Decloak podcast. And today's very special guest is Mr. Thomas Krantz. Thomas and I have got to know each other recently. He is a colourful figure, let's just say. Someone who definitely speaks their mind when it comes to cybersecurity topics, and someone I am absolutely privileged to have on the channel. And Thomas, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks. I'm great. It's great to have a chat and a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for the invite.
Legend. And then we'll jump right in then, Thomas, in terms of, tell the audience, give them a brief overview of who you are and your career.
Yeah, sure. So I've been kicking around in cybersecurity and IT for about 32 years. Actually started off in the 80s with the BBC Micro. I broke into Prestel, which was like the AOL of the 1980s, way back in the day, which got me into some serious trouble, which was a fantastic learning experience about cause and effect when it came to exploring cybersecurity topics. From there, I got involved in bulletin board systems, the internet at a very early stage. I did a lot of work with Silicon Graphics and Sun Microsystems, so high performance computing, supercomputers. That gave me some insight as well into how governments were starting to use computing. And I then drifted into cryptography when Phil Zimmermann was being pursued by the FBI over PGP. I hosted a mirror in Europe for the PGP source code and got some fairly entertaining cease and desist letters from the FBI, who still to this day don't understand what their remit is and how it ends at the US border. I've done a lot of work over the years with both startups as well as large financial services organizations and large consulting groups, tangled with everything from Anonymous all the way through most recently to North Korean hacking groups and Iranian hacking groups attacking some of the clients I've been working for. So it's been a fun ride, to say the least.
Amazing. And obviously, you've shared some previous links as well. You've done DEF CON talks and multiple other events. And it kind of feels like you're somewhat of a bit of a rebel. And I love this. It feels like, if we were part of Star Wars, we'd be absolutely kicking ass right now. And, you know, what kind of makes you, I guess, I don't know, maybe test or flex the system? Is it curiosity? Is it just about pushing boundaries, or is it literally, at the time you just didn't understand the rules of engagement? Yeah.
So I think going back to when I got involved, I was lucky. My dad was a teacher, so he was involved in the National Programme for IT in the UK. And he literally showed up one day. He came home from work and he said, "This thing's called a computer. Here's the manual. I don't know how it works, but it's going to be big. Have fun." And that was me dropped into that. And the 80s were very good for exploring and searching
Mm.
around knowledge. And part of that meant that all of us were testing systems remotely. I where I lived, it was in Berkshire in the UK, which is very close to the sort of M4 tech corridor. So I had companies like IBM, Cray, Silicon Graphics, Sun Microsystems. They all had their UK headquarters within a local phone call. Lots of them had machines hooked up to modems and they didn't have passwords. And the only way you could understand how these machines worked is to be in a very privileged position working for a government organisation or a very large multinational, or to try and break in and get hold of stuff. I taught myself Unix by borrowing a Sperry mini computer from where I worked at the time, and I wanted to understand TCP/IP. So I looked up where could I get the manual and the TCP/IP stack for this Sperry machine. And Sperry Unisys wanted to charge over £5,000 just for the TCP/IP stack, and it was another
Wow.
£800 just for the manual, and then you had to pay £15,000 to buy the network card. And this was a machine that realistically was old at the time. It was running SVR2 Unix, probably had a second-hand market value of around £1,000, £1,500.
Mm.
So the barriers to entry meant that if you wanted to understand how this stuff worked, you had to push the boundaries. And through my career, that's sort of been a driving force in terms that I don't think that you can be good at cybersecurity unless you think like an attacker, unless
Mm.
you have some sort of empathy with people who are trying to break into systems and are trying to do stuff. And yes, a lot of them are script kiddies. A lot of them are people who are doing it for still defacements and civil disobedience, and a lot of them are criminals. A lot of them are criminals from nation states, and you know, I'm sure people watching this will be expecting me to talk about the usual suspects: North Korea, Iran, Russia. Yes, I've dealt with all of those. But a lot of people forget that for UK and European based people, the US is also a hostile nation state. They constantly try to break in and test your systems. Um, they get treated with the same level of disdain as you would Russian hacking groups or something like that. But it's very difficult, I think, to be successful, even at senior levels, without understanding what motivates attackers and how do they work. And I don't think you can be successful and good at your job unless you're in a position to explain that to other people as well. And that comes down to that sort of knowledge. And yes, I'm a bit pain in the arse. I have an issue with authority and I don't do well. And that's shone itself through in some of the activism work I've done over the years, not just around security and privacy, but also other areas as well. I think a healthy skepticism for authority figures is part and parcel of thinking like an attacker and being able to be good at defence and security. Plus, it's
Absolutely.
fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's good insight, and I think people just assume when hackers are doing something, it's either with their malicious intent. A lot of it is, at times, can be just sheer curiosity or rage against the machine. I had to put in a music reference there, but obviously, quite an extensive career as well, Thomas. And talk me through like some of the challenges you face within industry. Again, you can touch upon any kind of personal items, professional. It's entirely up to you in terms of your level of comfort. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely say one of the big issues is the way cybersecurity is viewed, especially at large organisations. If we look at a CFO, for example, businesses have a CFO because financial fraud, is a significant problem. It has a significant impact. And when a CFO and a financial team do a good job, you have small levels of fraud. And that's evidence that they're doing a good job and that they're delivering on what the business needs. Look at cybersecurity; it's often viewed as a necessary evil. I've, as a CISO, I've had many conversations where I've been sat down and said, "So, why do you need this budget? Because we haven't been hacked. So, literally, what are you doing with your time?" And it's also an issue where we look at again. Finance is a great example of this: regulatory compliance. If the CFO makes a mistake, the business has significant fines and the executive leadership team are held personally liable. We've seen this with SOX, we've seen this with other regulatory frameworks which have held the executive leadership team, who are responsible, liable for their failures in leadership. When we look at cybersecurity, we see lots of businesses not really treating it seriously, not really investing in it, or treating it as a technology problem, which it isn't. And then they get caught with their pants down. They get breached in an avoidable way. We look at the giant Sony PlayStation hack that took place, that took down PSN. That was brought about because Sony didn't value their cybersecurity team and, in fact, fired most of them in the months leading up to that hack. That was completely avoidable. No one at Sony was held accountable. The business didn't suffer in any way. No executives lost their jobs. And we got the usual hand-holding about, there's not enough cybersecurity talent and we didn't have the right people. It's like, no, you didn't value it and you couldn't be bothered to spend the money on it. And I've found that difficult, especially dealing with larger organisations, because it leads to a huge amount of burnout. It leads to a huge amount of difficulty in terms of, why am I caring about someone else's business when the people who actually own the business and are responsible for it, they themselves don't care enough? It's like, what am I doing? And I've seen a lot of colleagues, senior experienced colleagues, who have drifted out of permanent roles and gone to work to consultancies because that takes the pressure off. Then it's just like, well, follow my advice or don't. I don't really care. You've asked for this. I've shown up and given you that. Where's my check? Thanks very much. Goodbye. I don't care if you're in business in 6 months. I don't work for you. And that's led for a huge influx of very experienced, very senior cybersecurity people who are fed up and burnt out and at the same time, they have been fighting against this complacency and this view that cybersecurity is a necessary evil, or it's just some box ticking we have to do to make sure that we're compliant. And we've yet to see, apart from the hilarity when Anonymous, a LulzSec, breached HB Gary, I think that's the only situation I've ever seen where a business has suffered the consequences of their poor cybersecurity practice and their poor investment in it. After 3 decades, that kind of gets a bit difficult to swallow. That gets a bit difficult to motivate you, which is fine, because then I tend to work with startups and smaller businesses who are much more agile and understand, if you work in fintech, or if you work insurance or an emerging market around manufacturing, a cybersecurity breach will end your business. It's game over. Especially B2B companies like lawyers and insurance companies, where they trade on reputation. Security breach has serious consequences, and they're aware of that, and they're willing to treat security with the same sort of seriousness and conscientiousness as they would financial fraud or risk management or anything else. So it's a problem, because I'm seeing a lot of large organizations not getting the senior cybersecurity talent and leadership that they actually need, and then turning around and blaming the security market and the talent themselves, and saying, this is your fault, and you're responsible for this. Why haven't you stepped up? Why should I?
Again, like, if people treat people within the industry with apathy, they're going to get it back, right? And then that becomes a major problem for when maybe there is a point where they turn and they're like, hey, we need to hire certain amount of staff, or we need to do a certain amount of projects, and then nobody wants to work for them. Like telecoms, I'm not going to name any mobile phone companies, but there's a few that are constantly in the news. It's like, what part is the penny going to drop? And one of the key things you said there was about, maybe your exec team or board or whoever it may be are saying, well, why are we giving you money if we don't have a breach? What they seem to forget is, it's like if you're going to build a house, you're not going to have a go at your builder, but where's the house? I mean, we've just started in day one. They forget that it's a project that needs architecture, it needs materials. You need to then build the foundation, maybe implement certain technologies that give you the insights to say, hey, actually we were under attack, and by a sheer miracle nothing's happened, or because we've got really old legacy stuff, you're getting script kiddies that aren't going to go read something from I don't know, XP or whatever it might be back in the day. And I think that whole for us security leaders are unmasking maybe stealth level attacks or fairly obvious stuff that's just been brushed under the carpet. And I think they seem to forget that we're like time travelers as well. I might actually insert some Doctor Who music at this point, but we see the past, the present, and the future when it comes to different attacks. You know what I mean? It's like, we're constantly going through that motion of going through time. And people don't see it like that. They're only living in the here and now, and they don't understand that in the past there's been historical items like legacy debt or pure apathy towards maybe patching, or they're not really thinking future, like the commercial implications of not having good security, the reputational damage. And as you said, startups, if they have one breach, it kills them. Security should be a differentiator when it comes to a market proposition, but I guess they don't really see it like that, and it's going to be a topic that just goes on forever and ever, I think. But speaking of topics, Thomas, is there a topic you want to discuss that you feel needs relevance in clearing up within the industry?
So I think the big one for me, and it kind of spins out of this a bit, is the constant whining that there is a lack of cybersecurity skills. Yeah. I've been hearing that for 10, 12 years. It's kind of reached fever pitch recently. And I've spoken at great length in the press, at conferences, about how it's fundamentally total bollocks. It's just, there is no cybersecurity skill shortage. There is a vast amount of companies who are stuck in the 1970s who do not know how to hire, who do not know how to retain talent, and because they don't view cybersecurity as actually adding value or understand how it adds value, they don't value the cybersecurity staff. And just have a look on LinkedIn. Look at the number of organisations who mandate a degree as being a must-have requirement for all cybersecurity. Yeah, it's not even like you have to have a degree from a first-class university to be a CISO. It's like that's retarded, but I can kind of let that slide. But I'm seeing people asking it for analysts, for entry-level roles, and it has no relevance whatsoever to the job they're doing or the value that they're adding to an organisation. And that's before you get into the whole pain of poor salaries, in internal grading, and this is especially rampant in UK government, which is kind of you reap what you sow, guys. You deserve that, but it's in the private sector as well. We're seeing people saying, okay, you have this career progression and this pay grade, and that's set in stone. I had a conversation a few years back where someone said, we're not going to pay your day rate as a consultant. You need to reduce that by 40% because otherwise you'll be paid more highly than the head of finance. It's like, okay, fine. So essentially what I'm hearing there is you don't value my skills enough to pay me the market rate. The fact that other people are paying that means that's the market rate. It's not me being greedy. Take it or leave it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been in these situations, like many people, probably yourself, Thomas, where the kind of back and forth. It's like they're trying to haggle for a fake designer handbag in Turkey. It's like, do you know what I mean? If you want Louis Vuitton, pay the money for Louis Vuitton, right? I don't know. We'll probably try and get some sponsor in here, and we'll cut to you and I and Louis Vuitton, flexing. But it's the same point. It's almost like they don't understand the market. They've just looked at maybe their local IT team and thought one size fits all. If Derek and Susanna are working in the corner, they're an analyst, they're on X amount, it must be the same everywhere else. They forget that there's I don't even know how many combinations of cyber roles, 30, 40, 50 different types of variations, everything from different levels of SOC analyst to, a BISO, a Business Information Security Officer. I mean, who come up with that? A BISO? I'm telling you, some recruitment agency is absolutely lapping it up. Anyway, sorry, Thomas, for interrupting you.
No, it's spot on, and it gets worse when we look at automated systems filtering CVs, which again, if you don't understand the role and you can't spec it properly, there's no hope in hell that an automated system is going to filter the correct candidates through. And then we look at organisations who don't trust their staff. I was speaking to a potential client last week, and they said, well, it's an 8-stage interview process. We want you to talk to the rest of the executive leadership team and then heads of department and then the individuals that you'll be managing. It's just like, why? Are you incapable of making a judgment within an hour of talking to someone about whether or not they would fit your organisation and you'd be happy to work with them? Because if you can't do that, why are you in a management or a leadership role? Why are you involved in any way, shape or form with the interview process? Because it's clear you're a cretin. You have no idea what you're doing. I was interviewed 6 months ago for a CISO role. The person interviewing me was asking me how many IP addresses would be in this subnet, and if I wanted to increase that, what would the subnet mask look like? I'm like, dude, I'm not being arrogant here, but the last time I had to care about that was 15 years ago, and I wrote an app for a Nokia mobile phone to calculate that for me. That's how long ago it was that I last had to care. Do you understand what a CISO is supposed to be doing for the business, and why are you even interviewing here? And the guy was just like, no, but these are our standard interview questions. It's like, I appreciate that, and thank you for your time. I value my time, and I'm not going to waste it on an interview like this. It's just like, I'm sorry. And I also think as well that people get genuinely upset and insulted by that as well. They seem to think that the interview process is a one-way stream. The number of times I've had people shocked in an interview because I've been asking them difficult questions about how the business treats security and how it works, and they're genuinely taken aback. Like, how dare you ask us questions? This is the interview. We're here to judge if you're worthy enough to come and kiss our feet and work at our organisation. It's like, no, that's not how it works. And I do a lot of mentoring. I do workshops. Do workshops at Hope, the Hacker Conference, for the last few conferences about how to navigate the interview process for job applicants, about how to sift the good from the bad, and there's those workshops have been, very well attended, and it's usually 2/3 to 3/4 of the people there are actively looking for new roles. And every time I hear someone stand up and say, "Oh, there's a cybersecurity skill shortage," I really want to give them a smack, because they're talking utter rubbish. There is a huge amount of talent out there, and existing processes for interviewing and retaining them are not aligned with the mindset and the skill set. Some of the best people I know in the industry, one of the best cybersecurity researchers I know has a criminal record. He was arrested as part of a hacking group for being involved in a breach. He is hands down one of the best talents I've ever worked with in the industry, and companies are fighting tooth and nail to get him on board. But in a normal interview process, he would be discounted immediately because he has a criminal record.
Yeah.
Someone else I know got thrown out of school for hacking their systems, which, to be honest, we all did, especially if we saw war games. He has no university degree, no formal qualifications. Again, an incredibly talented reverse engineer who is been an absolute asset whenever I worked with him, and his skill set is in huge demand. Normal hiring interviewing processes will completely skate by these people. And we add into that organisations who deliberately go to market. We've seen lots of coverage in the press about this, about companies who do not have open roles and are gathering CVs, or even worse, have made a bunch of layoffs and have lied to their internal employees and said, no, we're going to be hiring for this. And they go to market, but magically no one suitable is ever found. And that's in before we get to organisations, certainly in the UK, abusing the visa system, where cybersecurity is classed as a fast-track visa, something where there is a skill shortage. I've witnessed personally many times organisations abusing that. It's not that there's a skill shortage, it's that they want to hire someone at 40% less, who they then can dangle the control about, well, you will shut up and do as you're told, otherwise we yank your visa and you have to go back. And using that to maintain a 70-80% profit margin. No one benefits from that. It's a terrible position for someone to be in, who thinks they're getting a visa and thinks they're getting sponsored to advance their career, which is what we all want. And then it turns out they're essentially just an indentured servant for a large consultancy or a large company, who then abuses that position, treats them badly, and there is no career progression, there is no skills progression, and the end clients that these organisations are servicing then suffer from, hey, guess what? Crappy cybersecurity, at which point everyone else then turns around. It's like that Spider-Man meme. They're all pointing at each other saying, well, you're the fault for this skill shortage. And meanwhile, we have a huge pool of talent sitting there who are being snapped up internationally by organisations who understand their value and understand what they need. And seeing this sort of brain drain out of the UK, but out of the US as well. Seeing savvy startups and savvy organisations who have learnt from COVID that remote working is not just feasible, it's actually very sensible. And I'm seeing lots of startup organisations who are saying, well, you know what, we can get the pick of cybersecurity talent globally because we don't need to work from an office. And they are building fantastic cybersecurity teams with incredible capabilities, while a city across, an hour's drive across, you've got organisations saying, we can't find any talent whatsoever, this is terrible, we need all of these handouts and special visas, and we need all of these tax breaks so that we can fulfil this skills gap. It's endlessly frustrating. And it's also seeing a lot of very talented people who would have promising careers in cybersecurity, they're not entering the industry, because they're looking at it and thinking, well, I'm not even getting an interview. No one is talking to me. It doesn't matter how good their CV is. It doesn't matter how much interview prep they do. It doesn't matter how much effort they make to sort of handcraft their applications so it's razor focused on what that organization is looking for, they're not getting interviews, they're not getting jobs, and they're leaving the industry. And I can look back on 30, 35 years of a career, and I am not seeing enough people coming in and enough senior people giving them guidance and support so that there is that steady flow of new talent coming in and progressing through the ranks of skills and experience. And that to me is the real shame of this. We are missing out on good people. We are actively turning them away. And again, ultimately, there are large organisations who are responsible for many things that we take for granted in our lives, who have piss poor cybersecurity, and it's their own fault, and they're not being held accountable to it, and it's not being addressed as well.
And that extenuates the problem, and it just festers and becomes terrible. When you mentioned that Spider-Man meme, straight away I just thought Big Four. You know, between, giving people false promise and false hope to, better their life in cyber or whatever it may be, then they're getting, or it's graduates, and it's like, man, one of the Big Four get breached recently, and it's just like, these are people that are even buying up specific IP to integrate into their services, and they're still making a complete arse of it. I mean, it blows my mind. And this snobbery around, maybe somebody who's made a mistake in their life, some people you've mentioned are being involved in something, they're trying to turn their life around for the betterment, and they can't get a job because they're just screened out. And even these systems that you were talking about, like Workday, Jesus Christ, can someone just kill Workday? It is, hand to God, the worst application system I've ever seen in my life. It is absolutely excruciating. I actually know somebody who works with them, and I'm on their case all the time. Feed this back. It's all you're so disengaged. You're like, man, I've been doing this for 30 minutes. I can't even be bothered applying anymore. I don't even need this. Do you know what I mean? And then it's funny, you were talking about these 7, 8 different stages, and I think you're right, where maybe there isn't enough education from recruitment or whoever they're using to help them kind of position this role in this age old, well, you need to have a degree in XYZ. I remember I used to see things like chartered accountancy for a cyber role. Oh, it's because you're not actually doing a cyber role, you're literally auditing. What does that mean? Well, you're sitting with a massive Excel spreadsheet, bored to tears, ticking a box, and you're like, I mean, that should be entry level stuff for people. Maybe get them a bit of a flavour, show them controls testing, get them up to speed on risk management. Then you progress them into something a bit more technical. You wouldn't be like, here, you need to go do a chartered accountancy or a master's in XYZ. It's just a waste of brain power. You know what I mean? It's like, use people's unique skills. And it's funny you're talking about that, the subnet question, like CCNA questions for a CISO. It's like, it's mad. And then back to the 7, 8 stage processes. How much money is the business wasting on 7 or 8 different stages? Probably with anything up to 6 people, 7 people involved. It's like, then again, I would argue, I've seen companies that are like, hey, we'll interview you and give you a job within 1 hour. So, no background checks, or they've hired someone who's a QA engineer, never used automation. It's like, Jesus Christ. Anyway, we could rant all day about this, Thomas, but yeah. So, yeah, talk me through the one thing you think, the one thing in cyber you think is BS, it needs a focus or needs to change.
So I think it's related to this, and you've kind of touched on it as well. Talk about masters in cybersecurity and chartered accountants and stuff. This whole idea that cybersecurity as an industry needs to be professionalized, and we need some certifications. The EC Council, I despise entirely. I think everyone involved is just a caricature of incompetence. The CH certification has had many instances where they have stolen cybersecurity experts' content without their permission and then put it into their paid-for courses. The EC Council now have a certified CISO qualification. What the hell is that about? What absolute
if
nonsense!
no one has read this, it's on par with CISP as absolute grade A bedtime reading. It will guarantee to slip you into a coma within 10 minutes. But yeah.
Oh, it's just utter nonsense. And then we look at again the UK Cybersecurity Council, who tried to get the UK government to have you couldn't be a cybersecurity professional unless you were registered with the UK government, and there was quite naturally a very deserved outrage and splashback against that, and they turn around and say, "Well, no, it was just a consultation," and now they've taken over essentially the review of what used to be done by NCSE for certified cybersecurity architects and cybersecurity analysts and all that sort of stuff, which is a very government focus. But again, their review process is nonsense. That's just a certification mill where you pay your money and any old idiot gets pushed through, and the UK CSC is not headed by people who are cybersecurity professionals. It's led by people who have worked for government quangos and have a background in non-for-profits and zero industry experience. And they're very much bigging up about, well, you can't work on these significant infrastructure projects unless you've been through our certification process because we validate what's going on. And I know people have been through that, and I know 100% for a fact that while they're excellent individuals and they're great people, they do not have the skills to tick the boxes for a security architect, and yet they've been given that certification. They've gone through the approval process, and it's just been hand waved through. And there are certifications that have been around for years, like the CISP. I have the CISP. I've maintained it for well over 10 years now. I respect it. When I hire people and build out teams, if anyone has more than sort of 6 years experience, I would expect them to have the CISP because it is a no-brainer. If you have 5-6 years of experience, you should have the experience to be able to walk through that exam without stressing yourself whatsoever, and it serves as a really great capstone to the knowledge that you've amassed over that time in your career. But I'm seeing organisations saying, well, hiring for a security analyst, you need 1 or 2 years experience and you need a CISP because that's the only certification they're aware of. And their HR teams have not bothered to understand the context and just think, well, there we go. Much like a degree, a CISP is a mark of a good cybersecurity person, and there's like no context around that. And then we have technology companies who have followed the IT certification route, and you mentioned the CCNA. I quite like that as an entry level technology certification for networking, but we have a whole raft of people now about, well, you're Google certified and you're AWS certified, you're an AWS certified security architect. Oh, okay, great. That's a good thing to have if you're only ever going to work in AWS, but has that actually demonstrated good security architecture knowledge? No, it doesn't. It's a very vendor focused thing. And I think in the context of people struggling to get into cybersecurity and struggling with the crappy way that organizations recruit, people are seeing poorly written job specs which have a laundry list of meaningless certifications in them, and individuals who are desperate for a job, who are desperate for money, are spending money they don't have to acquire these security certifications. And there's even organizations in the US I've seen who will give you a loan, and they will guarantee that you pass a certification, and then when you get a job off the back of it, they will deduct the loan payments and they will help put you into a role. It's a total scam. It's a total scam. No one can guarantee that you can pass a certification unless it's something so utterly useless like the CEH that, I have a 3-legged dog who could probably get the CEH just going to the loo one day. It's that basic. It's that nonsense. And
ironically, we heard your 3-legged dog earlier, and it was shouting out the answers to CEH. So if anyone can translate that. Sorry for interrupting, Thomas. I couldn't resist. Yeah.
Oh, it's we joke about it, but a lot of this stuff has no value, and we are forcing people to spend money they don't have and to waste the intellectual powers that they do have on getting and maintaining these useless certifications, which then need to be paid for and renewed. I spoke to someone a few months ago who'd maintained their CEH for 4 years. It's just like that costs a significant amount of money each year for
Yeah.
what? What value has that
Yeah.
given you? And it's just it's taking advantage of people. It's a piss poor way of treating people, and it doesn't really demonstrate. Again, feeding back to what I was talking earlier on about poor interview processes and not understanding the skill set you were getting for being lazy by relying on certifications, whether those are academic or industry specific, doesn't really matter. You're essentially saying, you know what, I'm too crap at my job for interviewing people, so I'm going to rely on someone else to have given this person the tick of excellence that this security certification gives them, and therefore they must be good for the role. Again, it's people with skill and talent who have not got those certifications are being excluded from the process. And also, I think going back to what I was talking about very early on, yes, I have a healthy disrespect for authority. Fine. I have spent many hours over the years breaking into things and pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable and what isn't. And that intellectual curiosity is something that an interview process and a screening process should be picking up on and highlighting. That intellectual curiosity leads to diversity of thought within our industry, which I think is incredibly important, especially neurodiversity. People thinking in different ways is what makes cybersecurity effective. That cannot be professionalized. You cannot get a certification to slap on top of that, unless we're going to go around and say, well, show me your autism diagnosis. We'll treat that at the same level as a CISP or something. We can't do that. And people often talk about diversity in the industry, and they have a very narrow-minded, personally driven view of what diversity means. Whereas actually, we have a huge talent pool of people who think in diverse ways and approach problems in diverse ways, and we should be identifying that and hiring for that. And that does not lend itself to a very traditional certification structure that says, okay, you're at this stage in your career, you should have these certifications, you have these qualifications, that defines who you are. Yes, people should feel free to accumulate certifications over the years, and I've done it myself. I am a Lotus CCML professional. I'm very proud of that, and I would challenge anyone watching this. I would bet less than half of you actually know what CCMail is anymore, because it is a dead email system that no one has known about or dealt with for over 30 years. Is that something I lead with in interviews? It is actually on occasion when I want to be a bit of a pain in the arse and I'm fed up with the questions I'm being asked. But it's just not relevant whatsoever. And I think the focus in the hiring process and in the industry on certifications is losing sight of the fact that the skills that we can prove by a certification from yesterday are not necessarily relevant going forwards. I mean, my IRIX certifications, for example, I doubt very many people even know what Silicon Graphics is at the moment, let alone understanding the minutiae of IRIX and why an IRIX security certification, security knowledge is remotely relevant. We are not helping people. We are limiting people, and essentially we're damaging the capabilities of the cybersecurity industry and the people we work for by having this very myopic view about, it's people have been talking about cybersecurity for 30, 40 years. It's about time it became professionalized. It's just like, it's not like accounting. There are no set rules. And being able to break the rules and being able to challenge existing thinking is one of the fundamental strengths of cybersecurity. And until an institute is formed that comes up with a certification for being a pain in the arse or a disruptive troublemaker, yes, I'd totally go for that, and I would have that certification with pride. But until we get that, we are realistically not going to have any useful, meaningful certifications that serve as an accurate measurement of someone's skill set. Especially to your previous point, it's a very broad field.
Yeah.
You know, it's the skills required for someone who does ISO certification audits is very, very different from the skill set required from someone who is reverse engineering Android mobile phones. It's a broad field, and trying to catalog it and then slap easy to achieve certifications on top of it is insulting to people who work in the field, and it's discriminatory against people who are trying to get a foothold in there as well.
I think that's a really good point, Thomas, and I think it feels like a lot of companies just copy paste. They've seen something looks okay, copy paste it, there we go, and stick it out there, rather than being like, here's a varying degree of different things. If your job spec needs to be longer than normal, then what about hands-on experience, labs, repos, any projects, presentations, talks? Like, there could be so much that we can unearth just on the back of people being involved in the community, writing blogs, right through to, running workshops, B-sides, it could be anything. And again, that could, I guess, showcase people's ability where maybe they just lack how to stick a CV together or resume for our friends in the US. And it's like, I would rather take somebody with 2 years' experience with an extensive portfolio of what they're doing outside of the kind of norm than take somebody that's got like 6 acronyms at the end of their name. And I knew someone like that, and they had no practical hands-on experience.
Mm.
I mean, they could tell you everything you needed to know about network switches and, I don't know, configurations on various different things, but they'd never done it before. And that to me is like the thing that kind of, I guess, really irks when it comes to hiring. But anyway, I digress. And obviously, we wanted to plug a couple of things, Thomas, that I believe you've got a book and also some talks and stuff you want to showcase. So, yeah, back to you. The stage is yours, my friend.
Yes, yeah, no, thank you. I wrote a book. It came out last year, Making Sense of Cybersecurity for Manning, because I got fed up working with boards and exec teams, but also, yeah, project managers, development managers, people who didn't understand the fundamentals of security, but also were quite intimidated by it. We've spoken, it's a complex field. There's a lot of stuff going on. If you're a project manager or if you lead a development team, what are the fundamentals you actually need to understand about how security works? And I found that I was answering the same questions again and again and again, and I was giving the same workshops and the same demonstrations again and again and again. And we've seen this in the OWASP top 10 has remained unchanged since it first came out. And what are the big things there? Lack of authentication controls, cross-site scripting, SQL injection. All of those favorites have existed and still cause massive breaches. But why? We've known how those have been solved problems for 30, 40 years. I broke into Prestel in 1984 because they had crappy password management and crappy credential management. That's a problem that goes back over 40 years, and we're still seeing it today. We're still seeing those same problems. And so I put together the book as again, a very, very, very tongue-in-cheek, very relaxed introduction to how attackers work and how common defenses sort of protect against them, as an introduction to sort of demystify this stuff and to help people understand, oh yeah, it's not actually that complicated. I've got very tired of seeing pompous idiots walking around saying, oh, you if only you knew what we knew. And this is so complicated, I can't explain it to you, but you should be very, very scared, and you should either trust us to fix it for you, or you should buy these products that will fix it for you. It's too complicated to explain. Don't do that. Hackers will steal your children unless you buy this. That honestly just pisses me off beyond belief. And seeing that from government departments who are supposed to be advising us, like GCHQ and NCSE, that's bad enough. But then seeing it from organizations who are selling solutions, who are misrepresenting what those solutions do, and seeing people buy security tools and then getting hacked and not understanding why. And it's because they didn't understand the threat model and they didn't understand what the tool solved. So the book is an introduction to that sort of stuff. And touching on what we've spoken about certifications, and if you want to get into the industry, where do you invest your time? 2 years ago at the Hope Hacking Conference in New York, I gave a presentation around security certifications, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I was quite damning about quite a lot of them, including literally everything from the EC Council, who are like a cesspit of incompetence, but also organisations like the CREST certifications, which have been mandated for UK government work, and the organisation has expanded out the UK, and they turned out, rather unfortunately, they were a sponsor of the conference, which I didn't know about before I stood up and badmouthed them. But there was an issue with a company who their director was on the board of the CREST organisation, and they were found internally to be running labs where they were sharing the CREST questions, and they had predefined answers, and essentially they were running a certification mill internally. And this guy recused himself from the board. CREST investigated themselves, found they'd done nothing wrong. Shock horror. He went back into position. Everything carried on regardless. A lot of people in the pen testing space I spoke to were absolutely pissed off about this, because it immediately devalued all of the work they put into that certification, and they stopped renewing it. They stopped maintaining it, and so there are a number of certifications where either it is a waste of your money and your time and the effort to pursue them, or it is actively detrimental to your career to be holding these certifications. I mean, I raise my hand if I see anyone ever with the EC Council certified CISO, I immediately bin their application, and I don't want to talk to them, because that itself speaks volumes about the level of incompetence I can expect from that person. And if you're watching this and you've given the EC Council money for the CISO certification, I'm desperately sorry. Use a chargeback or something, claw back your cash. Don't do it. It's dreadful, absolutely dreadful.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, in America, it seems to be like a massive thing to have EC certs, or like a specific Microsoft, the Microsoft security ones. I can't remember them. And then again, like, each to their own. By the way, everyone watching this, me and Thomas ain't telling you what to do, but Thomas has been in the game a long time, giving his advice. He's obviously, had technical roles, given advice to a number of different companies. It is what it is. People either take the advice, check it out for yourself, but don't go doing anything crazy, like attacking multiple companies, being like, you cheated me out of like £800 for a certificate. You're going to get it. We're not advocating that whatsoever. But interesting. Like, I really, again, for our audience's benefit, I will put the links to Thomas's book and his talks. The actual video on YouTube that you need to check out is called A New Hope 2022 Cybersecurity Certifications, the good, the bad, the ugly. Check it out. I'll be in the description, and then hopefully people can have a laugh, because I remember, Thomas, you were telling me about it, obviously going on your huge rant, and then I was like, it was quite funny watching it, then the guy coming up, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is classic. But anyway, Thomas, in terms of any final thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
The one thing I would say to anyone watching this is, do not be afraid to do things differently and to push the boundaries. To your point, am I saying go out and follow Gary McKinnon's example and hack the US Department of Defense for proof of UFOs? No, please don't do that. But security benefits by thinking like an attacker and by thinking differently. There is a lot of established law, I would say, rather than knowledge within the security industry, and that's changed over time. And very often standard organizations tend to be very slow. Consultancies and vendors tend to be pushing an agenda around sales. A lot of what you will hear in terms of this is good practice may not necessarily be good practice anymore. So stay curious, challenge all of this sort of stuff. Think outside the box, because we need that. We need that as an industry. We need more weirdos. We need more people being disruptive, because that drives understanding, it drives transparency. The number of times I've heard a vendor talk absolute bullshit about, oh, no, this is completely secure because we use gobbly, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And a month later, someone has taken umbrage at that and said, you know what? I'm going to prove them wrong just because I'm so incensed at this level of bullshit. And they do it, and it drives the industry forward. It drives understanding forwards. Apple's big fanfare about their security chip, and it was 2 months later on when someone had broken it and bypassed it. That's what we need. We need more of that. We need people thinking differently. And from my point of view, if I'm hiring and building a team, anybody who comes to me with a job application where they show that they have got a portfolio of work, to your point of view, they've been involved in open source projects, or they've been involved in they've got lots of code on GitHub, they've got some proof of concepts, they've given talks, they've written papers. That stuff is pure gold for me when I'm building an effective cybersecurity team. And I want to see more people who are being disruptive, thinking differently, challenging things, because that's how we all learn. Every day is a school day. I'm not sitting here saying, oh yeah, I've been hacking for 40 years, I know everything. Rubbish. I'm learning something new every day, and everyone needs to be doing that. So please, if you're watching this, be weird, be different, be disruptive. We will benefit from it.
I love it. And also have your dog do your CH for you. I think your dog's like, I'm stuck in page 15. Like, I don't know, my paws can't claw with a pen here. What's going on? Brilliant. But yeah, absolutely, Thomas. Listen, I knew from the minute that we had a conversation, I was like, this is the right person I want on season 2. And, I think each year we're trying to kind of build, you mentioned Gary McKinnon. And a fun fact for our audience before I finish up and stop rabbling nonsense is I actually approached Gary to be the first ever guest on this podcast, but for various reasons, I think Gary just likes to be left alone. But yeah, check out Gary's work, and which seems to be now coming into fruition, I guess, at the end. So I don't know. Anyway, so on that note, Thomas, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Everyone, please show Thomas some love online. Check out his book, check out his videos. Please like, share, and subscribe. And again, Thomas, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Man.